Oh boy, this is gonna be good. Xpand Rally Xtreme came out 15 years ago, back in 2006. 2 years ago I've made a video very similar to this one called Xpand Rally 15 years later. In this video I am going to do the exact same thing as I did 2 years ago. It's time to celebrate the 15th anniversary of Xpand Rally Xtreme. Here we go. Before we start, however, I should quickly mention that this celebration will be a lot shorter compared to the one I've made 2 years ago. That's because I have to skip a lot of stuff. With that being said, here we go. Remember this track? Yeah, you do. It's the testing track. A lot of stuff has changed here. However, the track itself is pretty much the same. The biggest changes in this track are the props. There are more houses, there's more water, and there's a giant school. Not to mention there's a giant pier in the second part of this track. Unfortunately, you can't enter it, and that's a real shame. And if it isn't obvious by now, the game graphically looks a lot better than its predecessor. But because there are more props, some things had to be removed. For example, there used to be a huge tarmac field and a huge asphalt field. Both of them are gone, unfortunately. However, everyone knows that no one plays Xpand Rally Xtreme for the testing tracks. People play Xpand Rally Xtreme for the regular tracks. So how are the regular tracks? Let's start with the first track in the game, Malaysia. Go! Now, because this is the first track in the game, it's also the easiest. Oh, right, I forgot to mention that Xpand Rally Xtreme, gameplay-wise, strongly follows Xpand Rally formula. This also includes the track design. There are 5 big maps, 5 different locations. For example, Malaysia is one big map with a lot of different paths you can take. This means that you can create many different tracks in one map. But there's a problem with that. There are way less paths compared to the original Xpand Rally, and Malaysia shows it pretty clearly. So you're probably wondering, why am I not describing this track? Well, the reason is simple. That's because, well, you can see it on screen right here. You can easily tell what's going on. Other maps in the game also have this issue. They are a lot more simplified compared to the original Xpand Rally. But this doesn't mean that the tracks are bad in any way. No, the tracks are very well designed. As you can see on the screen right now, there's still the environment. You still have your tarmac, you still have your asphalt, you still have your obstacles on the way. The design at its core is good. It's just simplified, and that is all. With that being said, Malaysia is an easy map where you can easily cut corners, you can easily take advantage of it, and you will be able to win most of the races here pretty easily. However, the game itself also has this little problem with difficulty, but more on that later. For now, let's move to the next map. Now let's take a trip to beautiful looking China. Go! China in this game is a bit more difficult than Malaysia, but it's still relatively easy if you know what you're doing. Xpand Rally Xtreme introduces a new obstacle, holes in the road, and China has a lot of them. Most of the time you will find them on places like tarmac, maybe sometimes dust and mud, and if you hit them you are going to lose a few seconds. Avoid these holes in the road at all cost. There is also asphalt, but unlike tarmac and other stuff, it's very easy to navigate. Right here. You can also find a small village somewhere in this map, and also at one point you can also see a mini replica of the Great Wall of China. Oh, by the way, remember those annoying stones in Kenya? And remember when if you hit them your car gets seriously damaged? Yeah, those stones make a return here too. So to put it simply, China is a lot like Kenya from the first game, with some twists and more obstacles on the way. It's a challenging map, but it's also a fun map. Winning on this map is incredibly, and I mean incredibly, satisfying. While we are still in Asia, time to visit Japan. Go! Now this is the part of the video where I have to give Techland some credit. And when I say some credit, I mean an actual praise. Look on your right and tell me, what do you see? That's right, you can see a real life opponent vehicle. In the original Xpand Rally you could race only against the ghosts, and the ability to race against a real life vehicle in Xpand Rally Xtreme is a huge improvement. Racing against a real opponent also gives you a real sense of urgency. While you're in Japan, you can't mess around. You are here to win. Speaking of which, tracks in Japan play a lot like the special stages in the original Xpand Rally. They are challenging, there are a lot of obstacles, and they have very aggressive opponents. Unlike most tracks in the game, this one can actually be unique, and I think the best example of this is the Extreme Touring Challenges, which is the final championship in the game. Unfortunately, I don't have any footage of this because, well, I don't really want to show you the same footage over and over again, so I'm just gonna leave it as it is. Tracks in Japan may vary. A lot of the tracks are the ones you see right here, right now on your screen. Sometimes you have asphalt, sometimes you switch lanes, and sometimes you just use tarmac or dust or whatever. Extreme touring challenges, however, are a little bit different, mainly because in those challenges you can only race on asphalt, since you use those super or hyper vehicles or whatever I'm supposed to be calling them. Most races in Xpand Rally Xtreme are 1 lap long. In Extreme Touring Challenges, which are at the very end of the game, it's the final championship after all, the tracks are 3 laps long. But not all of them though. There are also 2 Extreme Touring Championship tracks that are 1 lap long, but that's because they take place in Malaysia. Now, because I wanna move on, I actually have to conclude this somehow. So Japan is a kinda unique track with a unique setting, and which also behaves like a special OS. And that's my conclusion. We can move on. Remember the boss fights? Yeah, you do. They are pretty annoying, not gonna lie. In the original Xpand Rally, they were completely optional. You only completed them just so you can have the 100% of the game, or just to win new cars so you can sell them or keep them to your collection because they're unique and they look cool. In Xpand Rally Xtreme, they are mandatory. You have to complete them because by winning them you get a new car, and you need that new car for the next championship. So this is pretty annoying, but whatever, you can also get used to it very quickly. Premium Stage 1, which you're seeing right now, is actually still an easy boss fight, but there are 4 of these stages, you know, Premium Stage 2, 3 and 4. You get the point. Problem is that here, not only they're difficult, but they are absurdly difficult at times. The perfect example of this is Premium Stage 4. Unfortunately, I don't have the footage of this anymore, so I am showing you Premium Stage 1 instead, just so you can get the picture. In Premium Stage 4, you are racing in the hardest track in the game, shocker, in a map that I'm going to talk about later. And the problem is that they actually increased the AI difficulty so much that you have to be perfect. If you are not perfect, you will have a really, and I mean really hard time just trying to win this stage. On the plus side, you don't have to actually do this Premium Stage 4 if you want to just complete the game. If you're ignoring the 100% mark, that's fine, you don't have to do it. But if you're one of those players that have to 100% everything, well, I'm sorry to say this to you, but you're gonna have a hard time. You know, ridiculous AI is one thing, but the track design also doesn't help. Like I've said before, you are racing on the hardest track in the game, and on this one track you can there's a trap in which you can destroy your car and even game end yourself. And when you game end yourself, well, if you do it on arcade mode, it's not a big deal. You can just start from the beginning and you're good to go. However, if you're playing on simulation mode, well, you actually have to lose some career progress in order to do it again. That thing alone makes the Premium Stage 4 one of the hardest stages you can ever complete in any racing game. Yes, you've heard that right. Premium Stage 4 is one of the hardest racing tracks in any racing game ever. Now I've realized that I have never made a top 10 list of the hardest racing tracks ever. But I can guarantee you, if I ever make that list, which the chances are very low, but never zero, I can guarantee you that Premium Stage 4 will be on this list, and probably it will probably take number 1 spot, or close to number 1. Now, because I want to move on, I'm going to conclude this really quick. Boss fights are difficult, but let's be honest, every game has a difficult boss fight, so let's move on. Now, before I show you the 2 remaining maps, I should also talk about extreme off-road challenges. And I have to say, those ones are actually pretty fun. Those challenges are a lot like the freestyle races in the original Xpand Rally. However, there is one huge improvement here. You are racing against not 1, but 3 different real life opponents. The rules of the freestyle races are pretty much the same as they were in the original Xpand Rally. You have one huge map, you can go anywhere, you can navigate anywhere, and you're basically touching those green portals and one red portal at the end. Do you remember what I've said when I was talking about Japan? Because now you are racing against real drivers, you have this sense of urgency. You cannot mess around, although those stages are a lot easier than the actual rally tracks. You still can't mess around. You can have fun, but you need to prove that you're the best. And when it comes to urgency, Xpand Rally Xtreme does that perfectly. Oh, would you look at that? I've said everything I needed to say about those tracks. So, in conclusion, Extreme off-roads are fun. Let's move on. Now it's time to talk about everyone's favorite, I think, USA Arizona. Go! Truth be told, there's not much I can say here because USA Arizona is the exact same USA Arizona as in the original Xpand Rally. Yeah. I mean, sure, they did add more obstacles in your way, for example, trees when you're trying to use shortcuts, or maybe sometimes some holes that you can, game end yourself with. But either way, it's still the same track as in the original Xpand Rally. So basically, USA Arizona is still the same. Now let's talk about my personal favorite stage, Italy. Go! Do you remember in the original Xpand Rally stages like Ireland or Finland, and especially how difficult they were? Well, Italy is basically the most difficult stage, or should I say the most difficult map in the entire game, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. The roads are tight, there are stones everywhere, there are holes on the sides, sometimes you can find holes in the road, the very dangerous and annoying jumps. It's actually perfect stage for people who like challenge. Not to mention very narrow bridges, and there's actually one, and I've mentioned something before about this one trap that can make you game end yourself. It's a real shame that I don't have a footage of this trap because it's actually made in a very interesting way. And many years ago, back in 2006 in fact, Techland made a presentation about this. Well, they were actually presenting their entire game, but they did touch on this trap. They were claiming that this is like a revolution for them. And yes, for 2006 it was very revolutionary. Sorry, man, I can speak sometimes. Well, okay, but what is this trap all about? On the other side of the map, there's a tunnel. Once you reach that tunnel, you enter a narrow bridge. Well, sort of a bridge, more like a narrow cliff, but whatever, let's call it a bridge for now. Well, actually, fine, let's call it a cliff. So, once you end on the side of that cliff, on the right side of the cliff or left depending on where you're going, there's this stone fence that can be destroyed. If you accidentally hit that fence, you lose the control over your car and you fall down the cliff. And once you fall down the cliff, well, this means only one thing. No, I'm not going to tell you what this thing is. I've told you several times already and I don't want to repeat myself. Also, it looks like we are reaching the end of this track, so now let me quickly explain what I'm going to do next. I'm going to talk about the negatives of the game, even though there aren't that many. And I also gonna conclude this because because believe me, I can talk about this game for hours, but I don't want to do that because I don't want to make this video too long. I don't want to make this celebration too long, as a matter of fact. And I just simply want to say the most important things, because if I talked about it for hours, I would start repeating all the things I've said about the original Xpand Rally. I mean, they are Xpand Rally and Xpand Rally Xtreme are very similar games after all, so let's continue. Now, the game isn't all perfect though, so now it's time to talk about the flops. There are some small flops and some big flops. Let's talk about the small flops first. Remember this sound design in the original Xpand Rally? Every engine sounded unique. You always wanted to try new cars just for the sound, or because the gameplay was just so satisfying. And well, the gameplay is still satisfying here. However, when it comes to the sound design, especially the sounds of the cars, they are very repetitive. So you probably remember the engine sound of center court in the original Xpand Rally. Here almost every car sounds like this. I mean, yeah, sure, there are some exceptions. So some cars sounds like they should, like for example Monsoon Evolution, but most of the cars sounds like center court. Now don't get me wrong, the engine sound of center court isn't bad. As a matter of fact, it's very powerful, but making every car sound like center court is not a good idea. This makes every single car sound the same. It makes them feel the same, as a matter of fact. There are people that actually like playing racing games just for the sound design of the cars, which is kind of ridiculous now that I think about it, but hey, I'm not going to stop them. If you like playing the game this way, you do you. I'm just saying, this makes the driving very repetitive. Speaking of repetitiveness, this is another problem of this game. As much as I don't want to admit it, the tracks are very repetitive. Once you get to the third championship, which is World Rally League, yes, very original name, I know. The tracks are incredibly repetitive because you are basically playing harder versions of the tracks you've already played. This is not good when it comes to the game design perspective. Well, or should I say from the game design perspective. Because it just feels like you're padding out the game time. You're just making it artificially longer and artificially harder, which is not good. Not to mention that Xpand Rally Xtreme is already a shorter game compared to Xpand Rally. Original Xpand Rally had 77 tracks. Xpand Rally Xtreme has 69 tracks. And no, I'm not joking, the game actually does have 69 tracks. Now I know what you're thinking. Oh, ha 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 ha, 69, yeah, ha ha, so funny, oh my god. But yeah, the repetitiveness doesn't help. And this pretty much applies to almost every track after World Rally League. Although the World Rally League is the biggest offender here, because like I've said, every track is you did this before, you played this before, you completed this before. And the only thing that are unique after the World Rally League are not the boss fights, because they're still repetitive, are the most unique things after, the most unique stages after that are the extreme off-road stages and the extreme touring challenges. And again, it's a shame I don't have a footage of these anymore. Oh well. And now it's time to talk about the biggest flaw of them all. The difficulty spikes. When you first start the game, you will find the game very easy at the beginning. The AI makes mistakes, and the tracks are pretty easily designed, and you will have a fun time getting all those gold trophies, gold medals, or whatever you want to call them, of course. I prefer to call them trophies, but yeah, whatever. Now listen, once you complete about 20 to 25% of the game, the difficulty spike, those random difficulty spikes are starting to show. And what does this mean? All of a sudden, the stages are becoming incredibly hard, and there are many offenders to this. In World Rally League, there are some stages called, there are 3 stages called the nighttime stages, and those are some of the most annoying stages in the entire game. However, they're not as dangerous, you know. They are not as dangerous as Premium Stage 4, for example. But the more you complete the game, the more ridiculous it becomes. So, for example, oh man, how can I even explain this? I don't even know, to be honest, mate. I'm guessing that you know, because to qualify you need to be at least second to unlock new stages, to unlock new tires, for example. Yes, that mechanic is back from the original Xpand Rally 2. As a matter of fact, the money mechanic and the buying mechanic and everything is pretty much the same as the first Xpand Rally, because it heavily relies on the first Xpand Rally, because Techland, of course. But yeah, these stages, man, everything about this difficulty spike is just so bad. The game is artificially increased. You have to drive perfectly in every stages, and if you're playing the game for the first time, you definitely won't be able to do it. So how can you protect yourself from this problem, you ask? Well, there is one way. Outside of the career mode, there is a single race mode. You can pick the track, you can use the car, and you can use the same car that you are using in the career mode, and you can drive through this track a lot of times. However, this is not as easy as it is, because, well, when it comes to tracks like Japan and extreme off-road stages, you always race about real opponents. And in single race is no exception. You have to race against them, and results may vary. So even if you can perfect the track, you can't perfect it 100%. You can only perfect them 100% if you've played the game for years, like I did. And what else can I say? I'm just going to say this difficulty spike can actually make you hate the game if you're not a good driver. So this game definitely isn't for beginners. I would recommend playing this game after playing the original Xpand Rally. However, when it comes to, now that I think about it, despite all of these flaws, I would still recommend playing this game nonetheless. It's still Xpand Rally. It still has that Xpand Rally feel. It's still an amazing racing game. As a matter of fact, well, this is man, I can't even speak. Oh man, I can't even speak. As a matter of fact, this is still my second favorite game of all time. So you can tell I love this game. The only thing that I think is better than Xpand Rally Xtreme is the original Xpand Rally. So what can I say to conclude this really? Although it's 15 years old, go play it. You will have a lot of fun. So yeah, have fun. Well, this is the end of this video. Hope you enjoyed it. Happy birthday, Xpand Rally Xtreme. Happy birthday to you. What am I going to do next? I'm not sure. I should mention that the day before, because today is the December 1st, yesterday there was Nail's 11th anniversary, but however everyone forgot about Nailed, so yeah, I'm not gonna make a video about Nailed, but more videos are coming soon. Thank you so much for watching, and well, I'll see you next time, pros. Goodbye.